Welcome to Recently Logged, where this week we're talking about what we recently logged.
Hello.
Hi.
Well, my name is Robbie.
And I'm Micah.
And together we are here to talk about the movies on our podcast, Recently Logged.
That's so crazy.
Which you may have heard in the little opening blurb. Today we're talking about movies that we've logged recently. If you can even believe it. We used to do this segment on, actually, I think all of our previous seasons. It's changed names over time. We're testing new stuff out with the new season, but
trying to make it more appealing.
Trying to make it more appealing.
See if people actually want to listen to these.
I'm always so torn doing one of these episodes because I'm like, I don't know if people actually like want to hear about just like random stuff that we've logged
like,
over
not about something specific.
Like, obviously there's a certain appeal to being like, oh, I watched, Ratatouille. I'd love to hear someone talk about Ratatouille. But with these episodes, I'm always like, does anyone even really want to hear me talk about, like, I was trying to think of the most random movie we watched this week. Hard 8 for like 2 minutes. I think that was last week, actually. We might have talked. Yeah, we talked about that last episode.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is what we're doing this time. We're going to go over...
it's going to be a little bit longer than our typical like what we watched segment. We're going to talk about things a bit more than that. So it's not just going to be like 20 minutes long. They can
see how long the episode is, which is wild.
But yeah, I got a lot of movies. We watched a lot of movies. I haven't had a single rewatch since the 18th. So
as it should be.
But we're starting from the 17th.
Yeah. Let's get into it.
All right, so Robbie, what did we watch on that old 17th of January?
On the night of the 17th, we watched a lovely little film called Bad Times at the El Royale.
What?
Which we had passed over back when it came out in 2018 for a couple of reasons.
They were having bad times at the El Royale.
But it always looked interesting.
Well, I never heard anybody talk about it except for Houston.
I don't know, man. I don't know. I saw the trailer for it, and I'm like, that looks kind of cool.
I don't think I ever saw a trailer. I saw nothing about this.
Dude,
I did not know it was that recent.
I remember being kind of excited for it, but then like thinking in my mind, oh, that doesn't look very clean. I probably won't go watch that in like a theater or anything. I don't remember how old I was in 20. I guess I would have been 16 in 2018, which is, yeah, that's right. Mm-hmm. So that makes sense. It's an R-rated film, so.
But no, I
remember watching the trailer.
I didn't hear like anyone talking about this. So, but anyway, I actually bought this one random day when Voodoo was having a digital movie sale,
digital movies
4K
baby.
sale, and I didn't know what to get. I was like, oh, I gotta get something that like you never see.
Yeah.
And then I had just seen Houston talking about that
Houston
again
Coley,
on Twitter.
Good friend of the podcast.
And I was like, oh yeah, I'll get that. So I got Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and this.
Nice. Two very good movies.
But then doing our little watch through that we're doing, I don't know if you guys listened to the last episode, but we were doing this little thing because we had some extra time this week and we put together this list of films we wanted to get through that were a lot of films that we hadn't seen yet. And Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is on there, and Bad Times at the El Royale was on there.
Yes.
And we just watched Once Upon a Time in Hollywood the night before, and then we watched Bad Times at the El Royale, which is really funny because they're set in the same year.
Strikingly similar in a lot of ways.
And and the one character is based off of Charles Manson, who does appear and have very strong plot relevance in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Very strange. that it would happen, but it has happened.
It was just an odd coincidence.
It really was.
Especially being, again, I bought them at the same time. So, and I did not know that they had any similarities.
Yeah, both set in 69.
Which is just kind of funny to me.
And both, well, one is half set in California, the other one is fully set in California.
You know, I feel like they spend more time on the Nevada side.
Yeah, they do. But on a technicality.
For Robbie, what are your thoughts on Bad Times at the El Royale?
Bad Times at the El Royale, it's a very interesting movie. It's a movie that's very clearly directed by a screenwriter, Drew Goddard, who is a pretty good screenwriter, I'll say. I enjoy Cloverfield. I enjoy The Martian, you know?
Yeah.
And actually, this is probably my favorite screenplay from him. It's a lot of fun. It's got a fun, like, cast of characters, which, I mean, that's pretty much its whole thing. It's very much an ensemble movie. But it's got a nice, sleek direction, good production design, good lighting. It's a fun ride, I will say. Yeah. It's got a good momentum to it.
Yeah, I was about to say, I really like what it does thematically a lot. I've seen now all of Drew Goddard's directorial work.
So his two films,
just this and Cabin in the Woods, and I know a lot of people love Cabin in the Woods, but Cabin in the Woods really isn't like my cup of tea, which is crazy because like that kind of like on a conceptual level, it is my cup of tea.
Right? It sounds like a movie you'd like.
But I don't know. There's something about the writing and even the direction in Cabin in the Woods that I really don't like. And I still feel some of that direction kind of coming through here. Something about this, like something about the way Drew Goddard directs is kind of like, I don't know, like not even inherently unappealing, but almost like fake feeling.
It feels like an artificial movie to a degree, which I don't think was intentional, but I could very much see how something like Cabin in the Woods, this would be way worse for, you know?
And I mean, you have Joss Whedon on the screen.
It kind of works here. Like, it kind of works here, like, to create sort of an odd atmosphere. But I could see it not working for other movies, absolutely.
But it's still very good. I love the cast.
Oh, yeah.
And I really love the production design and everything. It's just, I don't know. He's a very odd director.
If I had to, like, mount a criticism for it, I don't know. It feels a little...
It's poorly paced. That's a criticism.
It feels a little... It's just odd. I don't know. Like,
well, it's just kind of
a bit oddly structured.
It's kind of poorly structured. It's a little poorly paced. Thing is just kind of... It doesn't fully have the tie-in to bring everything around. Like in terms of the screenplay, it doesn't fully wrap around in any completely satisfying way for all of these different things it keeps popping up. Like, it's a very... Like, it's the kind of movie that like shows you a bunch of different backstories and you're constantly cutting to different things, which like
it can work,
but it doesn't really feel explored enough well here or used enough well here to really like, I don't know, come together
to fully come together. Because I do like a lot of the stuff here, like, and I actually kind of like the way they structure it a lot of the times. It can be clunky and weird, and kind of off-putting, like, I don't know, a handful of times for me. But I think the pacing largely works, or at least it did for me.
Yeah, I still really liked it.
Yeah, it was a good time, man.
And the themes and the character work, and I give it a 4 out of 5.
I also gave it a 4 out of 5. It's a good time.
Crazy.
And did we watch this later that night?
I don't think so. I think this was actually on the night of the 18th.
Oh, okay.
But I could be wrong.
I don't know.
I guess we had to have watched
I was about to say
that night because we watched that on the night of the 18th.
This is very, very interesting for the listener. They're like, I wonder what movie they're talking about.
We watched, and then later that night, technically on the 18th, we watched Nightcrawler, which was my only rewatch of this entire time.
My boy Lou Bloom.
And it had been forever since I'd seen Nightcrawler. I saw Nightcrawler like, what would that be, like 5 years ago?
Oh gosh, wow. Hadn't seen it since?
And hadn't seen it since.
That's crazy.
But I really loved it back then, and I really love it now.
Man, this is one of the best movies we watched over this little like stretch of films we did. I wrote a big long review about it, or not that long really, but a big long review by my standard of what I usually write.
Robbie, that one reviewer that I follow who always has the weirdest takes gave this like a 1.5.
Dang,
because
bro.
he doesn't like he found it unpleasant that Lou succeeds.
I wonder why.
He's like, I find the whole film very unpleasant. I'm like, that.
Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, dude, Nightcrawler. I know you were talking it up before we watched it, but it's so good.
It's really great.
Probably my favorite Jake Gyllenhaal performance.
Ooh.
Like, maybe a hot take, but like I feel like kind of a cold take. I don't know. I feel like this is easily his best work that I've seen.
I mean, it's between like something like Nightcrawler or Okja or Wildlife or something, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose you could make a case for Okja. He's pretty good in Wildlife, but I wouldn't take that over Nightcrawler.
But
at all.
But yeah, Nightcrawler is just really great. Like, I can't think of a bad element in Nightcrawler.
Right.
The performances are outstanding. The script is fantastic.
The script is so good.
The commentary and stuff works really, really well.
The commentary is like pitch perfect. I don't know how they do it.
The cinematography is really good.
Yes.
The atmosphere of the movie, the pacing. My only issue comes to a little bit in the pacing, because I think it's like a little bit too long.
It's like,
but that's like a little bit too long.
It's like a scene too long. Barely. Like maybe a scene or two you could have cut out, and it would be like the perfect lean, mean capitalism critiquing machine. You know? But I really enjoy it, and honestly I think it's probably one of my favorite movies now. It's so good. I don't know. It just works really well as like a dark comedy and just as a thriller in general too. So,
which is so interesting that this is the guy who did Velvet Buzzsaw.
Right. I'm so excited for Velvet Buzzsaw.
Nobody likes Velvet Buzzsaw.
Exactly. Everyone hated Velvet Buzzsaw. Did he just do like, he was like, oh, I critiqued the American news cycle and like capitalism. Now I'm going to do art.
And it's like,
and then it was
like half the same cast too. Literally, right? The main girl and the main guy are both in Nightcrawler.
Exactly. I'm like, what do you mean Velvet Buzzsaw is bad? This is the guy who did Nightcrawler. But yeah, no, I don't know. I love Nightcrawler. Big recommendation if you're up for it. I gave it a 5 out of 5.
I also gave
film.
it a 5 out of 5.
And then on the 19th, I don't know if you watched something in between this.
On the 18th, we watched Bullet Train.
But why do we keep having different dates for these?
It was the 18th.
Okay.
You just are super slow at logging stuff.
On the 18th.
You must have logged it past midnight.
On the 18th, we watched Bullet Train.
Yeah, our sister got back home and she was like, "Have you guys seen Bullet Train?"
Have you guys
and
seen
we were
Bullet
like,
Train?
No. And she's like, "Oh, well, you gotta watch Bullet Train."
You gotta watch Bullet Train.
I was like, okay.
I mean, Micah, I would watch just about any movie with Brian Tyree Henry in it. He's always great. And you know, he is fun here. But as with all of this cast, this is actually a great cast. But as with all of the stuff in this movie, it just really like sucks how just bland and kind of bad the writing is most of the time.
It's very directed by the guy who directed Deadpool too. You know,
it's a very, I don't know. It feels like it feels like it thinks it's smart and like funny.
It does.
And it just isn't most of the time. I feel like it should have leaned more into like the dumb fun.
I was about to say, its comedy. Its comedy is usually pretty weak because it's very surface level and like kind of stupid. Like there's some funny stuff.
No, there is some funny stuff, and it's mostly from the performances.
Yeah, and then like the plot is really weak. Like the plot, they think it's like the coolest thing with all these different elements being introduced on the train.
It's cool,
but it's like painstakingly simple. The story is not that complicated to be made this way. I put that in my review. This is such a simple story that has so little to say about anything that literally you could follow very easily without making it like they make it. But instead they make it with all these little introductions and like they're like, oh, this is so cool.
I can see what they're trying to go for with like the universe, the whole everything's connected thing, like that whole theming of especially Brad Pitt's character in this, like it makes sense like in my mind theoretically, but then in execution it just doesn't really come off that way.
It doesn't really have anything to say about that. Like I asked my sister actually when we finished it, because I said it didn't have anything to, like I said the movie had nothing to say, and she was like, well, what about the whole like you can't avoid fate thing? I'm like, well, what is that saying? And she's like, that you can't avoid fate. I'm like, but what does that mean for any of these characters?
I mean, like, it kind of comes off as a sweet arc for Ladybug, but like, I don't know. At the end of the movie, it just left me kind of.
Well, it doesn't.
Meh.
Most of the movie doesn't have anything really to do about fate, other than the fact that, oh boy, it's a big old coincidence that all of this stuff happened this way.
You want a good movie about coincidence? Go watch Paul Thomas Anderson's Magnolia. That's a great movie.
So yeah, it just like Ladybug's arc is just really not that interesting, because nothing really extraordinary, like quote unquote extraordinary, but like. From a movie standpoint, nothing really extraordinary even happens.
Yeah, I mean, this is basically just a day on the job for him, apparently.
But, yeah, I put in my review, it's just Kill Bill, but bad.
I wanted to praise, though, it has pretty good cinematography and pretty good lighting, too, which I was surprised. Most modern action movies kind of, fall on their face when it comes to lighting.
There's something very, again, like, artificial feeling about it, though.
For this being set entirely on a train, pretty much, the amount of visual variety and style we get is refreshing. I thought it was good, worth praising.
I give it a 3 out of 5.
I also gave it a 3 out of 5. I thought it was all right, but not great.
It's fine.
Yeah.
Then on the 19th, I watched The Virgin Suicides.
Sofia Coppola,
my first Sofia Coppola movie.
Yes, indeed.
I was kind of interested mainly because, like, I know not that many people are crazy about it, and it's in the Criterion Collection, and it's got Kristen Dunst in it, and like I was like, well, that's got to be something.
All of those reasons. Amazing.
And it was short, so I was like, yeah, I'll turn that on, see what that's like. And it's very, very odd. And like, I know everybody was like, it's a very odd movie, but it's a very odd movie. It's very tonally weird. The screenplay is really weird.
Interesting.
The direction's really weird. Like, everything about it is really odd. And I think for the most part, it works. Like, I think what they're kind of going for, especially on like a screenplay level, I think most people kind of agree that the screenplay is pretty fantastic with what they're going for.
Nice.
It's very like genre bending and kind of purposefully focuses on not like the girls who it would typically be about, and has something to say about the teenage guys who essentially narrate and lead the film, and like the way it goes about presenting them in like the fairy pixie dream girl aesthetic, even though things are not going so well. Like it has something to say with all of that.
That sounds very cool. I don't know.
But at the same time, the direction just feels like off. Like, and I know a lot of people have said that. Like, that's a big complaint from a lot of people, that a very good screenplay, very weird kind of off direction for the screenplay.
Interesting.
But again, I still think it worked pretty well, and the performances are really interesting, and like the movie left me thinking about stuff, which is good.
That's what movies should do.
And Kirsten Dunst's performance is definitely the standout. It's very good in this.
She's so good, man. I want to see her in more stuff.
She's really good in this. And I think she was 17 in this movie.
What? 17? Are you kidding me? That's crazy. Big if true, Micah.
I give it a 4 out of 5.
Very cool.
Very odd movie.
I can't wait to see it. It sounds cool. Next, I believe it was the next day. Yes, on the 19th, we went out to the theater. And we saw...
I think this was the same day that I watched the Virgin Suicides.
Okay. On a technicality, the same day.
No, it was literally the same. We just went to go see this that night.
I know. But we went and saw a film in the theater called Skinamarink.
Yeah, which I was very surprised to see playing at our local NCG.
Directed by Kyle Edward Ball. and it's a horror film, and it feels
debut film.
It feels like a YouTube video.
It does. It is
in the best way.
A feature-length creepypasta.
Yes,
in the best way.
We love to see it. Honestly, I don't know. Maybe I'm just speaking personal experience here, but some of the scariest things I've ever watched were like, down in the bedroom. You got YouTube, you got whatever, what have you. You got the internet. You find yourself a creepy video, and it's so unnerving that you're like, oh man, how will I ever recover?
Well, no, I mean, so I think this movie itself is very interesting. I've been thinking about it a lot lately, because it's got a very unusual style, a very experimental YouTube film-esque style. A lot of it is mostly like atmospheric shots of nothing.
I was imagining a cut where you like cut out all the scary stuff, and it's just like a quiet house.
But I think specifically it doesn't work for everyone. It's not a film for everyone.
It's not a film.
But when it does work, because I know a lot of people who really think this works, it works like really, really well. And for me especially, it worked really, really well because, again, like I mentioned, because like we went and saw this with my girlfriend and she didn't really like it that much. Yeah. Which made me sad, but I very much understood because it's pretty long and nothing really much happens.
I mean, it's probably the most experimental, quote unquote, film I've seen in a theater, which, is cool.
But it really, like, I don't know, a lot of stuff very much, I think, perfectly encapsulates what it's like to have nightmares as a kid. Mm-hmm. Like, it's very much, it feels like a child's nightmare. Especially like nightmares I would have had growing up.
I was about to say, I related a lot to a lot of the imagery and like just general vibes put out by this.
I thought it was very gripping. It's hard to look away from. It's very, like, at least for me anyway. Again, I know if you're not into this, it's so boring. Like, it's just the most boring thing.
I can't imagine, like, in my mind being anything but terrified watching this. But, like, I guess if it's not your vibe, like, you'd probably just be sitting there like, okay, when is the static shot gonna move along?
Yeah, I mean, it's mostly just static shots of nothing. And then I do have, like, my main criticism of it is that it's still, despite, I think, having some real depth to it, I think there's legitimately depth in a lot of its story elements and filmmaking, despite its kind of simplistic aesthetics and everything. I do think about most of the jump scares themselves are kind of cheap.
They're a little cheap, but I don't mind because they're really scary.
But yeah, any other thoughts from you on this?
The phone will haunt me forever and ever.
That's
the
so cool.
Price phone.
I love some people who've watched this that I know who think lesser of it. I love how somebody was like, they were like, it does more with the Fisher-Price phone than I could ever do, though.
Exactly.
Like, they put all their their complaints.
That is one of the most, like, terrifying images I can conjure in my mind is from this movie.
Which is funny because it's a Fisher-Price phone.
But yeah, no, dude, everything you said, it's got such a great, gripping, terrifying atmosphere, and it really does, like, thematically work a lot for me too. I'm looking forward to rewatching it a lot. I gave it a 5 out of 5 though.
I gave it a 4.5.
It was great.
I don't think it's quite perfect.
I don't know. It's a shaky 5, but it's a 5 nonetheless for me. Then
on the 20th, our sister showed us another film. This time we sat down and watched The Platform.
Heck yeah. I wanted to see this back when it came out too.
Spanish Netflix original, I believe.
Yeah, it's a Netflix original.
Sci-fi thriller.
I guess it's sci-fi, like a dystopian sci-fi thriller, which, we love to see it, I guess.
No, Robbie, it's not a sci-fi. We have floating platforms.
It's a documentary.
And infinite prison holes.
Yeah, The Platform. You probably heard a little bit about it back when it came out. I remember there being some buzz.
I heard nothing about it. And not a single person I followed besides Marianne and her boyfriend have seen this.
All right, fair enough.
I heard nobody talking about that.
I mean, I heard there was a couple people talking about it. No, like, rave reviews or anything, but the premise sounded cool enough that I wanted to see it back in 2019 when it came out.
You guys were like, she was like, have you seen the platform? And you were like, oh, the platform. And I was like, cool. I've never heard of the platform.
It looked cool, Micah. And it was a little cool.
Yeah, it was fun.
It was a bit heavy-handed.
It's very unsubtle.
Yeah.
And it's weird. It's a very odd movie, like, just from a writing standpoint. Yeah. I wish they would have gone full Don Quixote with it. I really
That would have been really funny. That would have been great.
The main guy is really fun to watch. I love him.
Yeah, he's a fun lead character and a fun lead performance too, I will say.
He's in Pan's Labyrinth too.
You watch him suffer in the movie.
Yeah, you can watch him suffer in both movies.
In both the platform,
he's the guy who gets
Pan's
tortured
Labyrinth.
in Pan's Labyrinth.
Another Spanish movie too, Micah.
Yeah, I mean, he's a Spanish
I guess,
actor.
yeah, he's a Spanish actor.
But no, there's a lot of really fun elements in this, too. I think the sci-fi premise is executed well, and I think for the most part...
It's a cool set piece.
I was about to say, I think for the most part, they keep the location engaging, despite it being very like simplistic.
A little cement block.
Somehow they made an infinite cement block very interesting to watch unfold. Yeah. I think they use its premise to an interesting extent. I think it's also just pretty simplistic, pretty heavy-handed, and it's not bad. It's just not doing too much.
It's got very obvious things holding it back from being like a groundbreaking masterpiece, but it is good. So I enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, it was fun. I don't really have too much to say about it.
Yeah.
I gave it a 3.5.
I gave it a 3 out of 5. Pretty good.
Then on the 20th, we watched... What did we watch?
We watched a little sequel to a film. It's called The Godfather Part 2. I did not think that they would harp on the Godfather theme so much in this movie. They really want to remind you of how good the score was.
I mean, they use it that much in the first movie, too.
I know.
It's like the only song they use.
I know.
There's like 3 songs in the Godfather score.
But I'm just saying, like, when I opened and it started playing the Godfather theme and then it kept coming up, I'm like, really, guys?
Robbie, it's about Michael Corleone.
Michael Corleone. I mean, it's a cool movie. I mean, of course it is. It's The Godfather Part 2.
It's such an odd movie. I didn't give it a 5. Like, everybody gave it, a lot of, I don't know. I know several people who didn't give it a 5, but a lot of people give it the 5 and they're like, oh yeah, it's just like The Godfather. But it didn't fully work for me as well as The Godfather.
No, it's no The Godfather, honestly.
But it's still very cool.
I love cool movie,
Michael.
Dude.
I love Michael. He was obviously my favorite part about the first movie.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people harp on a lot of the different things in The Godfather, but like really the thing that carries me through The Godfather is Michael, purposefully so.
Yeah.
So I think it's very cool to watch him as kind of really being in his own element here.
Absolutely.
But I also think it's odd that like there's so little that happens in this plot.
Yeah, it's an interesting movie.
Actually, from the Michael standpoint, he has a party, somebody tries to kill him, he messes around with a bunch of different people, kills some people, and that's it.
Yeah, that's pretty much the whole movie.
That's the movie. So because of that, you also have all of these flashbacks to young Vito.
Young Vito.
Played by Robert De Niro, which is kind of funny.
This is like one of the most bizarre De Niro performances I've seen.
Again, I love the review that it's 50% a Marlon Brando impression and 50% just absolutely normal Robert De Niro.
Right.
He'll do his little raspy voice, and then he'll be like, "Hey, what are you talking about?
What are you talking about?" What?
And I'm like, De Niro, what?
It's so funny, dude.
But I think thematically it works really well. I think that's really the standout here, and it's fun watching kind of like a full villain arc for Michael. I mean, there was kind of a small little villain arc for Michael in the first Godfather.
Barely.
I mean, that's the whole point, is like what drags him back into his family business, even though he didn't want that. And then in this one, he's going full. He's going full The Godfather.
But yeah, I mean, Al Pacino, Micah. Need I say more?
Dude, I love young Al Pacino.
He's so good in this,
I
man.
don't know. There's something that's always so weird to me because I feel like he just doesn't look that similar to old Al Pacino. Old Al Pacino and young Al Pacino
different.
look so different to me, and I know they look similar, but in my mind they look completely different, and I don't know.
It's two different people.
I don't know what happens, but yeah, like if I think about Al Pacino, and especially the first Godfather, because he starts to look a bit more like. He's got the.
I mean, he's aged a little bit.
Yeah, but if I think of
70s,
Al Pacino and the first Godfather, I think of a completely different person than if I think of like Al Pacino and like Dunkachino,
right?
You know, or even on the poster of the third Godfather.
Micah, finally Al Pacino in Dunkachino.
For some reason, this does not look like the same person to me, even though it is the same person. It's literally the weirdest disconnect in my brain.
But yeah, Godfather Part 2, very cool movie. Very surprisingly well-paced movie. Very oddly structured movie.
Yeah.
But it works well.
Yeah, I think it works.
It's a good time.
It works pretty well. I can't believe there's a cut of like these together.
Oh yeah, the cut of Part 1 and Part 2 in chronological order.
Yeah,
for
chronological
television.
order, which sounds bad because the Vito stuff, like the young Vito stuff, is very important thematically, specifically for Michael in this movie.
Yeah, the way it like juxtaposes the two of them in this works really well, and I can't imagine removing that stuff or like switching it around. You know?
Yeah, I mean it's still Francis Ford Coppola's The Godfather. Like every element that you would imagine is good.
It's a technically very well made and directed movie with great performances, great atmosphere, great score. It's a great movie.
I gave it a 4.5.
I gave it a 5. It's again wobbly 5, but it's there.
Then on the 21st, I watched Kill Bill, Volume 2.
Volume 2?
My second 2, we had The Godfather Part 2. Now we have Kill Bill Volume 2. Kill Bill Volume 2 is so interesting. Like the Kill Bill movies are so weird, and I really, really want to find the cut of the two of them together.
Yeah.
And like that has some of the deleted action, and it has a bit more like apparently he went a little crazier with the action. I don't think he could put all of it into an R-rated movie, if I remember doing some of the research I found. Like
That's weird.
It's not just a cut of the two of them together.
Okay.
Which is very, very cool. That makes me very interested to see it. But also I think the Kill Bill movies kind of get a little broken fundamentally by the fact that you split the story into two parts, like in the way that they split it into two parts.
I was about to say, there's nothing inherently bad about splitting up a story into two movies, as long as you handle the plot threads like well enough that it's an interesting movie like on its own.
Because like the first movie, I had the complaints of that, like it feels like just action, not much character work. Like you get introduced to the bride, you find out her motivation, and then it's just action. Like literally just she never loses, straight up just her killing a bunch of people. Which, you know, is fine. It's fun.
That can be a fun movie,
but it's pretty unsatisfying with what they present you, especially being that like you never even see Bill's face. Like she's on a quest to kill Bill, and Bill does not show up in Kill Bill Volume 1.
Who is Bill?
Which is a little disappointing. But then Volume 2 has really fantastic character work. It's got a lot of interesting stuff with Bill. It's got, but it's not nearly as action heavy, and it's not nearly as like creatively interesting. Like the first volume is doing a lot of interesting stuff. It's got a whole like animated segment. Mm-hmm. There's nothing like that in this movie. It feels very separate from that, and there's still like 2 action scenes, but it's mostly just character drama, which is fine. It's good character drama, but it feels really weird because, again, like all of the good elements of this are not present in the first part, and all of the good elements of the first part are not present in this, and it really bothers me because they're both fine separately. They're still both enjoyable separately, but they would just be really, really good combined if you just like
put them in a blender.
Yeah, if you just blended them up. So yeah, I don't know. It kind of bothers me, but I really want to find
the whole bloody affair.
Yeah, the whole bloody affair.
Yeah. No, I honestly, I probably like would have pushed to watch Kill Bill sooner, but I kind of want to see the whole bloody affair opposed to like seeing part 1 and 2 separately. But we'll see.
I give it a 4 out of 5.
Nice.
It's still really fun. It's just I don't know. It bothers me.
Yeah.
But then what did we watch next, Robbie?
Later that day.
Same day.
Yeah, later that day we watched John Wick Chapter 2.
Which, again, we had...
Another sequel, Micah.
We had The Godfather Part 2, Kill Bill Volume 2, and John Wick Chapter 2. I don't know if you could get another something 2, you know?
But yeah, this was really good.
I mean, yeah, it was fun.
Yeah.
It was. I wasn't as big of a fan of John Wick Chapter 2 as the first John Wick. I just don't think the story is as engaging. I never really got into any of the motivations for John as much in this movie. I think it's kind of a little too... I don't know. I think that's really my biggest complaint of how the story goes about, is like there's nothing that invests me into feeling that John is justified in like a lot of the more revenge-y things he does.
When he blew up his house.
Yeah, but like, I don't know. It doesn't seem like he's that... Like the whole thing in the first movie is that it goes out of its way to emotionally justify why this dog would mean so specifically much to him.
Yeah.
And then there's nothing that either like recaps on that or picks up on that or adds any more of why this specific house means something to him.
I mean, it's the last bit of his life that he has left.
No, that was the dog, Robbie. Not the house. The house does not mean that much to him presented in the first movie. He's like shooting holes in it left and right. He's tearing it up in everything in the first movie. So I have no reason to believe that he would go on this crazy of a revenge quest, like ending in the way that it does, especially over somebody blowing up his house after he could probably predict that he was going to blow up his house after what he said to him.
I mean, he seems very like just generally upset that this guy would bring back the medallion, you know?
Yeah, but he, like, of course he would. Why wouldn't he? It just doesn't make sense to me why he would go this crazy with it. Because
it's a movie, Mike.
Because he used he used the marker. This guy, by the rules of their own universe, has every right to ask John to do a job for him. It just doesn't. It never. Like, the action is still really good. I don't like the cinematography as much as the first one. I don't think it's as visceral. A lot of it feels a lot more distant.
Yeah.
Not in a good
No, it's
way.
a lot clearer and a lot. I think it's a lot more pointed.
Pointed to what? Like, again, it's not as interesting of set pieces in my opinion, and then because it's this different cinematography and not as visceral, and the revenge thing isn't as interesting, it's not as like, yeah, when the action comes in. It's more just him doing all of these things and you're like, oh yeah, there he is, he's killing a guy with a pencil.
I don't know, man. I had a lot of fun with this one. A lot more fun than the first one.
I still think it's really good, but I'm trying to justify here the fact that it's not better than the first one, Robbie.
I mean, I think it is better.
The side cast, you're wrong. It is not better than the side cast of the first movie.
I mean, the first movie is really great and it's kind of a blast, but like, I don't know. I enjoyed this one more. I enjoyed watching this one more.
Which is crazy to me.
I always feel a bit disengaged through John Wick.
But that's literally what happens with this, because there's so much less to grab onto.
I don't know. I felt a lot more engaged.
There's such a strong emotional core in John Wick, and that's what makes it work on every level, including the action, which is a lot more visceral because you can get into the true like rage that they're going for that John Wick has, but it doesn't feel justified for him to have as much rage here. And then the filmmaking itself is presenting it in a little bit more clean, sterile way, so it feels like he's just working. Like, it doesn't feel like it just doesn't get me connected to this at all, and there's not as many interesting side characters and that interesting of a plot.
Dang. It's so still, bad movie.
No, it's still good, and the action is good, and the plot is fine. It's a fun action movie, and these things are just goofy, stupid action movies with stupid little plots. I gave it a 4 out of 5.
I also gave it a 4 out of 5.
I'm just saying you're wrong here. It's not better than the first one.
Yeah, no, I mean, I thought it was better than the first one, but evidently I may be flawed in my thinking here. I don't know. I enjoyed it more than the first one at the very least. So there's that. And then on the 22nd, the very next day, we sat down and watched another movie, Micah. If you can even believe it, another one.
Another movie? They make more?
They made more movies? I can't believe it. It's called Silent Hill.
Silent Hill.
Based on the game of the same name.
I think most people, if you say Silent Hill, will only think of the game, Robbie.
I don't know. Some people might think of the Kendrick Lamar song, Micah. It's a good song.
Also based on the name of the game.
But yeah, Silent Hill. It's allegedly one of the better video game adaptations from the 2000s.
Oh, really? I didn't think people liked this that much.
Well, that's the thing, Micah. Most 2000s video game adaptations are crap. And most people at least think this is like a semi-competent movie, you know?
It's one of the better horror video games out there, if we're talking the original Silent Hill.
I mean, I've never played Silent Hill, so I wouldn't know.
But I was very, very curious about this, because, like, how are you going to adapt Silent Hill? And they do it in a very odd way. They fully commit to it, man.
They commit to the bit.
They really go for it.
I'm happy.
It's obviously different from the game.
Yeah.
And story here and there.
Well, the game is considerably longer narratively than
but
this.
you have a different like a little different character plot and everything, and different things going on. But like, it's very similar at the same time to the game. Like, they grab a lot of the stuff, they commit to being pretty similar to the game. Which makes for a really odd movie. Being
it is a very strange movie.
Just the kind of game that Silent Hill is.
Yeah.
I guess my biggest complaint for the movie would probably be that it's a video game adaptation, and you can very much feel that it's a video game adaptation in the writing.
Yeah.
It doesn't have the time to really go over all of the different elements that make Silent Hill in the runtime. So, like...
Yeah, it doesn't give the weight it should to a lot of the things that it presents.
For like...
Because the stuff it does have is cool.
For the religious cult, you can't really have the time and justification and really getting into the weight of it like you can very naturally in the game. And then because they have that, and that's kind of like, you know...
That's the
crux
plot.
of the plot.
That's where the climax is.
You don't really have time to explore a lot of the actual interesting elements of being in Silent Hill.
Right.
You get a couple, like, the whole beginning of the movie, sure, but then it doesn't really go anywhere. Yeah,
the first half of the movie is an absolute blast, man.
Like, there's almost no repeating monster, which is very interesting to me. And then,
should there be? I don't know.
Like, well, like, a lot of the monsters and everything are, like, the kind that you would just, like, run into all over the place. In the game. And then, like, Pyramid Head himself is in it, like, 3 times.
Right.
And he's not that much of, like, an antagonistic force to them. Like,
it made me a little sad. I was like,
he pops in and he like tries to kill him a couple times, and like the thing he does on the church stair steps are very that was pretty sick.
Was so cool, dude.
And like, it's a very sick movie overall. I love the design work. The effects look surprisingly like really good.
This is 2006, dude. It looks good.
I mean, they used a lot of practical work combined with CG.
You can tell, man. It looks good.
Yeah, but like, it just feels very odd. It feels like there are 2 halves of the movie. One that's very like Silent Hill monster-y, and then the other that's focusing on like the religious stuff.
Yeah, like the cult and everything.
Which both of those elements
they're both interesting in their own ways, you know.
But it has so much more time in the game to flesh them both out together. So, but in this, it does not have that time, so it just feels weird.
Yeah, I honestly wish it would have just doubled down on the cult thing or doubled down on the monster thing.
But they're both integral to Silent Hill. So
I know.
It's very
they would have had to take like a pretty radical step and just focus on like it being a atmospheric monster thing where she's just searching for her daughter, and like there's not as much lore. It's just, you know, whatever. It's a cool, scary movie. Or they could have doubled down on like the cult stuff and had that be like moment 1 she gets to Silent Hill and immediately starts like seeing stuff. But
I don't know. I don't think either of those I think would work very well. I think this is probably one of the best case scenarios.
It really
for Silent
is.
Hill
it really
adaptation, because like you really can't think of anything else that would be like better to do with.
To its credit, it actually weaves the 2 of those together pretty well.
I was about to say, because I can't.
It just feels like it could
I can't imagine it going fully like dropping most of the side elements and just focusing on monsters. I can't imagine that be like working that well.
That would be really fun to me. I don't know.
Focusing on the religious cult anymore. Like, I don't know, just go watch Mad God for that, Robbie, for the monsters.
That sounds so dope.
But yeah, I don't know. It was still a neat movie.
It's a great movie. I thought it was a lot of fun. I had a good time, you know. But I gave it a 4 out of 5.
I gave it a 3.5 out of 5.
And that was the latest movie I had seen.
Yeah, but I watched more.
Did you watch another movie, Micah?
On the 23rd, on late into the night of the 23rd.
Of the 23rd.
Yes. I don't know. I guess it would be on the 22nd, but we watched Silent Hill on the 22nd, and I didn't think it was that same day. No, but I guess it was.
Yeah, it was.
Because I stayed up late because I had
Yeah,
to
it was
work.
later that day,
Yeah. So anyway, later that day, late into the night, I turned on The Irishman.
The Irishman.
Martin Scorsese, Netflix original, The Irishman.
The Irishman.
Very odd movie, very long movie. It's very, very good. I think it's very interesting what it does thematically. I think especially playing it like next to something like Goodfellas, because I think they're actually pretty similar movies, The Irishman and Goodfellas, in
Very
terms
cool.
of the way they go about telling their story. And I mean, obviously they're both mob films.
Yeah. Well, you know Martin Scorsese. He just makes mob films, Micah.
But I think like thematically the differences between the two in terms of the difference in age and position of the characters, and even Martin Scorsese himself. And I think it's just really neat the way the Irishman weaves its story. I think Frank is a really interesting character to watch, like, throughout his whole life.
Nice.
And, like, what it's saying as him. I don't think all of the plot stuff is that interesting. Like, I think the most of the plot elements revolving around Al Pacino's character doesn't really work that well. Like, I don't know. I never really get that into that being, like, the main conflict of the entire story. Obviously it's doing more like different stuff thematically from just that, but that is 90% of the plot is focusing on the drama with his character.
There you go.
But I really love what it does thematically, especially by the end. I think it's got something really interesting to say about forgiveness, about religion, about growing old, about mob films. I think it's very interesting, very neat. And I mean, it's a little, I put in my review, it's a little played out feeling. I feel like a lot of people got that feeling from it. Like, it's not quite snappy enough in any particular way to really feel like...
To justify how long it is.
Well, no, it feels like you would imagine a Martin Scorsese movie feeling, not like how you act, like how most actually
I was about to say,
feel.
Scorsese is usually a very energetic director.
And it feels like a little bit like it's going through the motion, like the Scorsese motions, which is interesting from it. And then it's got some weird elements, like the de-aging stuff genuinely looks weird. And again, like Adam put in his review, you cannot convince me at any point that Robert De Niro's character is younger than like 50. He does not, like, no matter the de-aging they do, the smoothing to his face and the darkening of his hair, he's still, like, especially his body, it just looks older. And
it's unavoidable.
And then, like, you have, like, weird, like, smooth face Joe Pesci Robert De Niro, and like their mouths just look fake.
That's so funny.
And they look like almost like Man of Steel kind of faces.
Nice.
With the editing out of the mustache. And that's a little off-putting, but luckily, just in general, because of the way the movie operates, as it goes on, it gets better, and it's really not that noticeable. But in the beginning, when they're the youngest, because I mean, it progresses from them being pretty young, to them being really old. Like when they're younger, it's so, you're like, oh man, that's interesting.
It was probably for the best that they put that stuff at the beginning, so you kind of forget about it by the end.
But it would have been a very interesting movie to see in theaters. I know a lot of people talked about like seeing it on the big screen and that being interesting, and I would have loved to do that. It's weird that it's a Netflix movie,
right? It's so strange that it's a Netflix movie in my mind. I'm like, Scorsese, he made a Netflix movie? ?
But yeah,
that's weird.
But in some ways, I also feel like it feels like a Scorsese Netflix movie, you know?
If you said Scorsese Netflix movies, Mike is like, this is exactly what I thought of.
But still very good. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5.
Very nice. Not top tier Scorsese,
not
but
top
close.
tier Scorsese, but still very good Scorsese.
Very nice, very nice.
And then last night, the night
on the very eve of the recording of this very episode,
the 24th, I watched a little ditty. I watched David Cronenberg's The Fly.
The Fly.
My second David Cronenberg film.
A sci-fi classic.
Yeah, a sci-fi 80s classic. I was very excited for it.
You gotta watch the original sometime, Micah. It's so good.
I cannot see it being better than this. I feel like this is like best case scenario for this story.
Well, from what I understand, I think it's a 50s movie. The 50s, or I guess it's probably 60s, but that version of The Fly is quite a bit like fundamentally different than this one. Like it just like outside of the basic premise, they're kind of very different movies.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought this was really neat. I loved the energy it had going. I always thought in my mind before I watched this, like, oh, Jeff Goldblum, that's a weird casting choice. But man, without Jeff Goldblum, this film would not work. Like his performance is really, really good.
Nice.
And like his like weird kind of Jeff Goldblum-y off-putting charisma, like really, really works for the character. If you didn't have somebody as charismatic as Jeff Goldblum, the character would not work.
That's hilarious.
And it's really more Cronenberg-y than I thought. And its screenplay, he goes on about like the new flesh and like a lot of like the way it comments on stuff just feels very like even more so than Scanners, like just Cronenberg-y.
Dude,
which
Scanners
was really funny.
It feels painfully Cronenberg already.
Like I wasn't expecting that from The Fly.
That's funny.
But
I mean,
man,
this is one of his career-defining movies.
Yeah, that's true. It's his most popular movie on Letterboxd.
Yeah.
But like, man, the first half is like doing something like really engaging, and I was really excited for it. I really liked the characters. I really liked the performances, and then the second half is just so gross.
Nice.
This movie is gross.
Yes. More gross movies, please.
This movie made me a little sick to my stomach.
Nice.
And it's not like the most like shockingly gross things you've ever seen, but just the specific stuff it does do is really gross.
Yeah.
I think
you're making me way more excited to watch The Fly.
Yeah,
now.
I think Emily of YouTube and co-writer for Sarah Zed's channel as well.
Yes.
Put in her review that it's one of her favorite horror films, not because it's the scariest movie, but because it ticks off so many of her body sensitivities. And I'm like, yeah, this movie is...
Oh, is it like one of those like movies where like if someone doesn't like watching surgery, like it would make them squirm?
I don't know. Not
that kind of thing.
Surgery. But like, there's just a lot of like gross body things in this, dude.
Nice.
At one point, there's like a maggot pregnancy scene. It's really goofy.
Sounds amazing.
It's so gross.
I need to watch this movie.
And like it keeps its energy the entire time. I'm glad it's as short as it is because it goes. And I thought it was perfect. I know a lot of people don't feel that way. I only know like one other person who gave it a 5, and I usually do not agree with his opinions.
That's kind of crazy. I thought this was a pretty beloved like Cronenberg flick, you know, of his career.
I mean, it's
got a 3.9, yeah.
But like, I don't know, a lot of people gave it just like a 4 or something.
Yeah.
But I can't think of a single thing that was like wrong with it or that I would change. I had fun with it the whole time. There were multiple times my eyes were like I was actually like, whoa. Like, dude, that's so fun. And yeah, I think Jeff Goldblum's performance really, and even Gina Davis, they're both really, really good in this.
I'm very much looking forward to it now because I like Scanners a lot.
See, I don't even like Scanners.
Micah doesn't even like Scanners. I'm like, I love the 50s Fly. I love Scanners. What could go wrong with me watching David Cronenberg's The Fly? You know,
I wish The Fly. I can't believe this like Scanners is in the Criterion Collection and The Fly. I want The Fly Criterion. It's
too big, Micah. That's the thing. It's too big of a movie. But I would never get the distribution for it.
The Fly Criterion. There's not really that cool of a release for The Fly.
It's a shame. I can't wait to see it, man.
But yeah, I really
like
loved
a good
it.
time.
I give it a 5 out of 5.
Nice.
And that is what we watched.
What we watched.
That is our recently logged.
The stuff we have recently logged over the past week. Hopefully you got maybe some new movies to check out. Maybe some controversial opinions on some old classics.
So
who knows?
For some people who listened to the last episode too, if you recall, we had a specific list of films
we had a little
that we were
list
going
of films,
over,
yeah.
And we got the 10 of them. Mm-hmm. And I figure we could mention our rankings of those 10.
I suppose, yeah. It's only 10 films.
But yeah,
Why not?
not all of these, definitely not all of the ones we watched this week were part of that little
No.
list
We
that
had
we
a
made.
set like little.
Yeah, we
thing.
made like a set of, it was probably like 30 films that we were grabbing
Yes.
from, and we watched 10 of them. So my ranking, do we want to do like number 1 and then number 2 and like
Yeah, we can.
count through?
Sure, yeah.
My number 1 is Silence of the Lambs.
Very
I think
good
that was the best of them. I mean, it's a classic, obviously, but I really just genuinely think it's got like, I think it's just got the most cinematic power out of any of these.
I mean, it's a certified, like, I think genre-defining film for, like, crime thrillers.
Yeah.
It's great. But my number 1 was Nightcrawler.
I was like Nightcrawler better than Silence of the Lambs.
I don't know. What? Maybe? Is that so crazy?
My number 2 is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Very nice.
I really, really loved Once Upon a Time in Hollywood
so
both
good.
times I watched it. It's
so
really
good.
engaging. I love what it's doing thematically. I can't believe so many people say that it's kind of like a pointless film.
Like a nothing movie. That boggles my mind.
Yeah, like I don't know how you couldn't see. I feel like it's got very strong and nuanced things to say thematically,
Right?
But yeah, anyway, I loved it. It's such a goofy movie, but that's my number 2.
My number 2 pick was Silence of the Lambs, of course. You know, if it's not going to be number 1, it has to be number 2.
My number 3 pick was Nightcrawler.
Nightcrawler, great movie.
Very good.
Love to see it. My number 3 pick was Tar.
Ooh, Lydia Tar.
Love Tar, man.
Tar's very, very good.
Can't wait to see it again.
My number 4 was The Godfather Part 2.
Godfather Part 2, great film.
Or was like Nightcrawler better than The Godfather Part 2?
Yes, I would say.
I mean, I said so
definitively, yeah.
too, but Tar better than The Godfather Part 2.
Yes.
I don't know about that.
Pretty definitively, yeah.
Definitively. From who?
From me. My number 4 pick was Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. My first and only Tarantino at the moment, and it's very, very good.
My number 5 pick was Tar.
Very nice.
Well, no, I guess The Godfather Part 2 was my first 4.5. Then Tar was also a 4.5.
Okay.
But Tar is so good. Love Tar.
Tar's so good.
Glad I own that.
I went out and bought it like this past week. I was like, I must own the Tar Blu-ray. But yeah, my number 5 pick was Sorry to Bother You, which is a very cool movie and a very good movie.
And who would have thunk it? That's my number 6 pick.
Number 6
Sorry to
pick.
bother you.
Wow, my number 6 pick was The Godfather Part 2.
Oh.
Wow, look, our lists aligned, Micah.
for one thing.
One movie.
Our number 7 pick, Bad Times at the El Royale. Your number 8 pick is Stupid. That is the worst movie we watched out of any of those.
No.
Yes.
My number 8 pick is Paul Thomas Anderson's Hard 8, or
which is
Sydney.
not bad. It is a 3-star film. It is not better than those other 2 films.
It is. I think it is better.
No, it's not. How, Robbie? Like genuinely, from a film standpoint, how?
I mean, I had more fun watching it than Silent Hill.
My number
or
8 pick is John Wick
John
Chapter
Wick
2.
2. Where's Silent Hill?
It's my number 9.
Oh dang! I thought you'd have that a little higher. Okay.
Why? Look, Robbie, you could break this down by rating 3, 3.5, 4.
I mean, yeah, you could break mine down by rating too, but like, it's
But
just
you're rating everything the same thing. You give out 4 stars for nothing. My number
Wow.
9 pick, Silent Hill.
my number 9 pick was Silent Hill.
Oh, look, they matched again. And the worst film that we watched out of this list was very
John Wick
clearly
Chapter 2.
Hard 8. It is a weak film.
I mean,
that
it has its
very
weaknesses.
no, it's a weak film that is very amateurish. Its emotional core doesn't really work that well. John C. Reilly and what's her face? Yeah, Gwyneth Paltrow are focused on way too much.
They are.
It doesn't really work, and the scene, like occasional scenes, may be really good, but there's no cohesion. It is a weak film.
I don't know.
I
man.
love Paul Thomas Anderson, Robbie, but it is a weak film.
I don't know. I thought its technical like stuff was enough to make me enjoy it a lot while I was watching it, and I loved the main performance in it. That was enough in my eyes to make it a very enjoyable movie. Evidently, you disagree.
No, you're just. I guarantee, if this was not a PTA film, you wouldn't give it that high.
Micah, it has Philip Seymour Hoffman in it.
For one scene.
It's a great scene, though. There's so many great scenes in that movie, Micah.
See, I think there are so many good scenes in that movie.
So many great scenes.
Like, there is no scene that I'm like, wow, this is better than a scene from like if I think a great scene, like I'm thinking like scenes from like Tar, scenes from The Godfather Part 2, scenes from those are great scenes. So these are fine scenes. There's some good scenes in this movie.
There's some really good stuff.
But especially being that there's not much cohesion between the scenes, I wouldn't especially not elevate them to great.
I don't know, man. I don't know. I had a good time watching it.
I had a good time watching it. I thought it was a fine movie. I gave it a 3. That's a positive rating.
It is a positive rating. I find it really funny that, like, I don't know, I think a solid 10 minutes of this episode has been Micah being like, John Wick Chapter 2 ain't all that, and then we gave it the same rating.
Well, I'm just saying here, I'm just trying to, like, I
the
feel
voice of reason.
I am gobsmacked, if you will, in terms of the fact of just two of these opinions. the John Wick Chapter 2 being better than John Wick, and the Hard 8 being better than John Wick Chapter 2 in Silent Hill.
I don't know, man. I don't know. I'd want to watch it again before I'm like definitively like it's a bad movie, but I enjoy it.
It's not a bad movie. I didn't say it was a bad movie, but there's nothing about it that makes me want to rewatch it either.
I don't know, man. I'm looking forward to revisiting it.
Well, that's nice.
Because I thought it was a great movie. I don't know. But yes, that's the stuff. That was our rankings.
That was our little, as jokingly dubbed by me, film festival.
Yeah, I was about to say Micah has claimed it to be our film festival. With I don't think any new releases besides Tar. So
Tar's new, Robbie.
Well, exactly.
Don't forget about Tar.
Yeah. I mean, I hope you guys enjoyed that. This is our first time doing an episode like this season.
Yeah.
And hopefully it was fun.
I was about to say, I know there's not usually much, like, they're less viewed, and there's not as much to draw people in for these kind of videos, but we had watched a lot of new movies that we wanted to talk about, and we also, like, didn't really have much of a plan. Like, we were trying to think of a good idea for a movie, and we couldn't really think of anything, so we went with this, because we were like, oh, there's a lot of movies that we wanted to talk about, and anyone that we would want to talk about, we didn't have enough time to go catch again before we recorded the episode.
Yeah. But yeah, we're gonna look at the Oscar nominations later today. Have a good I hope you guys have a good. I couldn't remember the name for the Oscars for some reason. But hopefully you guys have a good rest of your day whenever you're listening to this.
Go check out.
Go watch a couple movies.
My new video's out.
Absolutely.
And I'm working on a new one pretty soon that I'm going to get out at the beginning of February.
Very nice.
So then I can do a different video at the end of February.
There you go.
So there may be a lot of videos releasing on my channel soon if all goes to plan.
There you go. Yeah, thanks for listening.
Yeah,
and we'll catch you guys next week.
Bye.